Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to have on the phone today one of the greatest wrestlers, one of the greatest bookers, one of the greatest creative minds, greatest finish men, greatest all-around wrestling personalities that has ever been my pleasure to work with, for, or be punched in the face by. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Bill Superstar Dundee. Bill, thank you for being a guest on the program.
Well, thank you, James E. Cornette. I appreciate you asking me.
Well, and you've got your own program too in Jackson, Tennessee, every week, right? Tell us how to get that.
It's on Superstar and the Aussie Blog Talk Radio. You just go to that website, and I guess you just punch the button. I've never listened to the son of a bitch apart from doing it, so I couldn't tell you how to get on it.
Well, the Aussie actually is Neil. The Superstar is obviously you, but the Aussie is Neil, your partner. And I've done the Superstar and Aussie show on Blog Talk before, and it was a lot of fun. And I was the one with the strange accent.
Yeah, I got you.
And also, Bill, you've got a great book. Your book is still out, right? The one you did with Mark James, which I cribbed exclusive notes.
No, we got the kind of change that. Mark started it, but Randy Hales actually finished it. And Mark did all he got it published and all that and put the pictures. But the actual writing of the book, I talked on the telephone and Randy Hales typed the book in.
Well, but the point is, it's going to be on sale again at some point soon in a purchase location near you. We got to start. You got to correct me on some things. I promised you at the start of the program because you have to correct one of the stories that I told here on MLW Radio here not long ago, I believe, or was it on the Steve Austin show? One or the other. The point is, I got the punchline a little wrong, so you got the chance to correct it.
Right. No, maybe you got the punchline right because you said from Jerry Jarrett, and he may have said all that. But that never took place. He never locked me out of the limousine. I didn't ride with him that day. I rode with Eddie Marlin because we had to take the motorcycle down to the arena, and when I run the guy over, or the lady over, we had to load the bike back up in the back of the truck and bring it home. So I think him and Bobby Monroe left in the limo, but he may have locked Bobby out. Who the hell knows? Because Bobby asked the lady, said, "You're not going to sue us, are you?" So he may have got pissed off at him. So who knows?
Well, I remember, ladies and gentlemen, I do apologize. What I said was there was a night in the Memphis Coliseum, for those of you who haven't been faithful followers and who didn't hear the story, where everybody on the babyface team came out at spectacular entrances. The Fabulous Ones and Jackie Fargo came out in a limousine, and Lawler came out riding a white horse, and Bill chose as his mode of transportation to the ring a motorcycle. But they blinded him with the spotlight halfway down the aisle. He hit the beer, went sideways from where our vantage point was in the back, where the heels were watching the thing. It looked like people were flying in the air, bodies were crashing. A helicopter had exploded or something. But actually, nobody was hurt. And I think one lady, right, Bill, wanted your autograph. Yeah. And you kissed her on the cheek. And but Jerry Jarrett was not happy, and the way that I had told the story when they were riding back to Nashville in the limousine, they had pulled over halfway over because Bubba Monroe let Bill out because Jerry wouldn't talk to Bill and let him in the back. But Bill did not ride back with Jerry. He rode back with Eddie and the motorcycle, but Jerry was pissed and wouldn't talk to you for a while.
Right, for about 2 months, he never spoke to me. But see, I was supposed to be on a golf cart going to the ring, and I wanted to do the motorcycle.
How exciting would a golf cart have been? An old woman on a scooter could have passed you.
Right, I understand that part, and I tried to explain it to him, but he said, "No, you're too goofy to ride the motorcycle." And I said, "Well, okay." But the day we went to get the golf cart, and they had it sprayed the same color as my jumpsuit and everything. It was turquoise. They had spent money on painting the damn thing. And the battery went dead. So Jerry Jarrett did say their words to me. He said, "Go get your motorcycle. But I have more sense than to let you do this. But you go do it. Get your motorcycle and take it to Memphis." And then the rest, you know what happened. We run the young lady over.
What can happen, right? What can happen? Just one time.
What could happen? If the guy had listened to me, nothing would have happened, but I couldn't see. It was like looking into the sun. Now, here is another correction from the good old days that Mr. Cornette said wasn't quite true. The spotlight was the motorcycle where I couldn't see. You said Robert Gibson fell off the stage in Little Rock, Arkansas, because they hit him with a spotlight. No, he walked into the dark out from under the spotlight and didn't see the stage had ended, and he fell off there in the dark. Remember that deal? He came limping to the room.
Okay, I will admit to that. I will mea culpa the correction on that one also. Yeah, he just walked straight into the darkness, pitch blackness.
Right.
Oh my God!
We got another one here, James. We don't want homework on listening to you on the Steve Austin thing.
It always involves people crashing and burning and falling down somehow.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, this one's kind of the same thing we ended up with Ole Anderson. Remember when we all ended up in Atlanta, Georgia?
Yes.
Well, you kind of said that I lost the power play to Lawler on that, but that really wasn't happened either. I mean, Lawler just took the book over. I mean, he owned part of the office, so we never got into no beef. Ole just came up and asked would we like to go, and that was the first time in the world that actually seen James E. Cornette away from Memphis, right?
Yeah, well, actually, and now, see, you've taken credit for that, so people can blame you from now on, because if it wasn't for you, I probably would not have ever been seen outside Memphis, Tennessee. So,
right.
So it's your fault. Okay. You get the hate mail.
I got you. Do you know how you go into wrestling business? How we came to ask you?
Well, for which job? The managing job of Jerry Bates?
When you used to take pictures at the Louisville Gardens, you'd take pictures of the boys and sell them. You wrote a freaking book on that and told everybody how it was. No. You know how that goes, right?
Well, the story I heard from Jerry was that he figured if I could get as much heat with the fans as I got with him, that I would be a natural.
Right, but do you know what he actually said to me, that why to come ask you?
What did he say?
You showed up you must have been at your graduation or something with a fucking powder blue tuxedo on. Do you remember that?
That was at his housewarming. Yes, it was great. Okay. I was shooting pictures at the housewarming. It was black tie, had a powder blue tuxedo on.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
that was a gimmick.
That was So he says, I hate that son of a bitch. He said he's arrogant, he's belligerent, and he thinks he knows everything. He said, do you think we could get him in the wrestling business and the fans would hate him as much as we do? I said, not me. I like Cornette. He says, maybe it'll kill him. So I thought, wow, that's a little happy. So he got you in the wrestling business for some mark to kill you. Quite funny, huh?
Well, actually, he didn't get a chance. Bill Watts got closer than he did.
You did that now.
I only got knocked out once in Memphis. They used to knock me out once a week in Mid-South.
Remember the first time the cowboy leaned over that big banister, the fucker in Oklahoma, and punched you in the nose?
Oh, Jesus.
Remember that deal? And it was all bleeding and we brought to the back. You remember that?
Can I bring up, since the statute of limitations has run out now, this guy in Baton Rouge at the Centroplex one night leans over the rail and takes a swing at me, and I managed to duck out of the way just in time, and I go to hit him with the racket, and as I draw back, I hit a cop in the head, which was one of my mistakes. And as I go,
they get mad.
Dundee flies out of nowhere, because you were booking at the time. You weren't wrestling, so you were in street clothes, and you were watching in the back of the stands. Bill flies out of nowhere and just pile drives this guy about 5 times and 5 quick rights to the face while he's down in the front row of the bleachers. And then, of course, disappears. And when the cops drug this guy back and he filed a complaint and he wanted to sue everybody, and Bill Dundee was down as unnamed co-conspirator because nobody was sure exactly who you were. You were in and out so quick.
Yeah, that first year I just booked and never did. Yeah, we had a lot of fun there. We had one riot in Tulsa where somebody got you a tennis racket that had the damn horseshoe in it, and I think it was Bobby. He was swinging it, and he hit Bill Watts with it.
Yes,
remember that deal?
Yes, that's when the guy nailed me in the nose, Bobby had the racket. Yeah. Bobby was swinging so frantically, he whacked Watts in the side of the head and took all the skin because Grizzly Smith had the fan by both hands by the hair. And Bobby was trying to hit the guy in the head, so he took all the skin off Grizzly Smith's fingers.
Yeah, the guys today have no clue how it is to have real serious heat with the people.
Well, let's go back to that for a minute, because I got into your book, but I've read it before, but I got back into it, and your early story is fascinating enough. From working on a farm, to an illegal poaching ring, you worked for the circus, all before you got in wrestling. But when you got in the wrestling business, it was an entirely different world. You were smaller than most of the guys in the business, and also you were in Australia. So even though Jim Barnett had made Australia one of the most successful wrestling territories in the world, they had top level talent. It was hard to get in starting out. You had to be persistent.
Right. But here was the other good thing was Hal Morgan run the local clubs there, and you always need, now they call them Hanson, but back then it was jabroni. So everybody started off in Australia putting Americans over, and we could all work. So Jim Barnett loved that aspect because you had good guys, guys that could work, putting guys over that he was pushing. So, and the boys liked to work with us. So that's all how we did that for 12 years. And then Barnett would book you in all the other towns and give you the first, the second, or the third match. And you made a good living at it. So it wasn't until Bobby Shane came over that he tried to get us booked here in America.
Well, would you say probably the three people that were most influential in your early career were Barnett, obviously, when he started liking you and started using you, Bobby Shane, because he was the guy that was the conduit to get you booked here in the United States, and your partner, George Barnes?
Yeah, and Hal Morgan, because he was the guy, the boss over there, and he kind of put you in the right spot for Barnett to use you in the first place. Yeah, so but Bobby Shane was actually the guy that called Jerry Jarrett on the phone that day. He said, "You guys need to go to America." I said, "Hell, Bob, we've heard that from 20 wrestlers." He said, "No, I mean, you need to go." He said, in fact, he looked at his watch and he said, the time zone's about the same. So he said, "We'll call Jerry Jarrett right now." And that's how it all started that day. And it took a year to get the papers. That was the beginning of 74. And the beginning of 75 is when we got to America. It took a year to get all the papers.
How long had you and Barnes been teaming in Australia before you came over here? Because you guys were so good. Obviously, you'd been together for a while.
Yeah, 12 years.
Jeez, all together.
We'd been around the club circuit and doing jobs for Barnett and working opening matches for Barnett for 12 years before we ever come here.
Because the thought of my mind when I think back at the matches that you guys had in the Memphis territory, and people don't even realize, because Barnes and Dundee was such a big name in Memphis in that territory as a tag team, they don't remember that it was only 6 months that you guys ran before Barnes got homesick and went back home to Australia. And
right.
But in that 6 months, you guys really were the ones that changed the Tennessee territory, because before you guys, the heels were always, the Don and Al Green, or the interns, or Kurt and Carl von Bronner, the big burly guys that, they did power shit. They didn't fly. They weren't just, they weren't over the top athletic. And you and Barnes came in, and the bumps and the matches were just insane. They were wild. You guys didn't slow down, and it marked a change in the style in the territory.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in that. I'm glad you brought it up, because people don't look at it that way. Because, like you said, George was only here like top 6 months, but they still talk about him. They asked me today, "You still talk to George?" And I said, "Yes, I do." So we made a little dent in it.
Well, I remember seeing, it was the Infernos with J.C. Dykes, or whoever it was, the heel team in Tennessee would come in, and they'd be big, and they'd hit hard, and they would trap the baby face down and work him over methodically. When George Barnes and Bill Dundee would come out against a top babyface team, they'd shoot you one way, and you'd go forwards over the top rope out in the third row, and they'd shoot Barnes the other way, and he'd go backwards over the top rope into the second row, and people would be whipping jackets off and launched into a frenzy, and you guys set that kind of pace, but the territory wasn't used to it, and it was really a change. Because from that period on, younger, faster guys really were more featured in Memphis.
Right, but Lawler was coming along too. I mean, he was young, and that boy could take some bumps too. So, I mean, the best thing that happened for us was when they fired Lawler. They fired Lawler for about 4 months, 5 months at the beginning of 75. So that was what helped to get me and George over, because they were desperate for talent.
Well, yeah, and
we
you
were
guys,
raw and green.
well, you guys carried the territory for that 4 or 5 months there until Lawler came back. I remember that, and you had to work with, you worked with the Fullers, including Buddy Fuller, who came out of retirement, had to be the stiffest old prick that's ever stepped foot in a wrestling ring. Had to be.
Yeah, he was pretty. The three of them, Big Ron was pretty stiff too. Robert wasn't so bad, but Ron and Buddy, there was no relief either one. But I mean, the people believed, and we believed, and that's what it was all about them days. But look, when we went to Louisiana, same thing. Ricky and Robert, Dennis and Bobby, you, me, Dutch, all little bitty guys compared to Bill Watts.
Yeah, and it was the same kind of change where it was a style change and there was more action. And I think, as when Barnes went back to Australia, you were still a heel. Then you switched babyface, but you were still usually a tag team guy. What was Jerry Jarrett's plan with you from the start? To reward your hard work, switch you babyface because you were so naturally good looking, or what kind of plan did he have?
The very first day we walked into Nick Goulis's office, the second person we met going through the door was Teeny Jarrett. And Nick was there, and we never saw Jerry Jarrett for the first 3 weeks we was here. We was on Nick's end. And Nick booked us for 3 weeks before we ever got to Memphis. And Teeny Jarrett said that day when we walked in, she said, that little cute one needs to be a babyface. You don't need to make him a heel draw. He'll draw you more money as a babyface. And I said, Miss Jarrett, we're the bad guys. We don't want to be good. She said, well, I'm just telling all the men here, the bookers or whoever, you need to be a babyface. And Nick never used the word babyface. He used the word dirty and clean. He was either a clean wrestler to Nick or a dirty wrestler.
Yeah,
so he said, now, Miss Jarrett, he's going to be a dirty wrestler. He's from Australia, so you know how that goes.
And obviously Australia noted for dirty wrestlers is all they produce.
Yeah.
You have to be a dirty wrestler from Australia. What did you think? Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just going. What did you think of Nick Goulis? What you coming from Australia to Tennessee was culture shock enough, and then Nick Goulis with that distinctive voice of his, an old Greek from Alabama, conniving, cheap wrestling promoter. What did you think of Nick Goulis when you got here?
Well, we'd had all the stories about him. I mean, like Don Carson and even Shane and all them. Because when Shane sent us over here, he said, now you make sure you tell Jerry Jarrett you're working for him. But that's another story. So to answer the question on Nick, you couldn't really help but like him. You knew he would screw you on a payoff, or he would tell you bullshit. But he was a kind of likable bullshit artist. But no, George was just an evil fucker. But Nick, I actually liked Nick as far as that goes, but you just knew you was dealing with a snake, so you picked it up by the head.
Nick Goulis was kind of like old Henry Marcus, High Pockets Henry Marcus in Columbia, South Carolina, who lived to be 98, I think, and was a promoter there for 100 years, and he wore his pants so high up that we joked that he would reach over his shoulder backwards to get into his wallet, get in his pants pocket to get his wallet. Nick would just had that appeal to him, as some kind of perverse appeal. Even in the old days in Nashville Live TV, when he would tell little George when he was a kid, the end of the wrestling show every night, Saturday night at 11 o'clock would be, go to bed, Georgie. Good night to my son, George.
Yeah, he would talk to him on the TV. Yes, he did that. And he wondered why George was he was when he grew up. You know what I'm saying? It was like he tried to make a man out of him when he became, I guess, 20 years old. And thank God for Bobby Eaton, because when they put the jet set together, at least you could get a match out of him. You know how that was, the jet set.
Yeah, Bobby Eaton's first tag team partner when he was like 18 years old in his first main event spot was George Goulis. So basically, Bobby could start the match, Bobby could do some spots, Bobby could sell, and Bobby could make a tag. And if George could get through the next 90 seconds, they had a fucking winning tag team combination.
But his partner's dad was the promoter and whoever the booker, so you knew they were going to go over and they were going to get a paycheck. Yeah,
it was good job security for Bobby for quite a while there, while he got a chance to get some experience. And tell me something about the guy who first gave you the name Superstar, who was a tag team partner of yours and one of the weirdest, but in another way, like Nick, charismatic guys in the history of wrestling, Big Bad John. His work was abysmal. And when he cut a promo, it would make the heavens rumble. He would call God down with a promo and couldn't work a lick. And
yeah, you're right. And they brought him to Australia on the same pretense type thing. I mean, he was brought him in as a working manager because you kind of had to work and do that too. But most of the time, he never wrestled. He was just the manager for Mark Murphy and Brooke Bernard against Mark Lou and King Curtis and all that. Right. So he was the one that they switched in 1976. He used to be a bad guy with a black leather jacket and steel helmet and all that bullshit. And Jerry Jarrett made him the Bison. Do you remember that?
The Bicentennial Baby. Big Bad John.
1976. Yeah, Big Bad John. He had the red, white, and blue outfit. So he took the leather coat and he burned that and he threw it away. And now he was the Bicentennial Baby. So he walked out on Memphis TV because Jarrett put me with him to do all the work, tag him, and go home. You know how that works. So he told Lance Russell and all the people in Memphis, he said, well, if I'm going to be the Bicentennial Baby, and that big voice ahead, well, that boy here is going to be the superstar. And from that day on, that was it. So that's how that came.
Okay, tell me something I've always wondered, because the highlight of the show for that, like 8 weeks you ran with John as your partner, was when you guys came out and did an interview. It certainly wasn't the match, but the interview was classic, and there was always something going on. But then suddenly Big John disappeared. He was noted for just leaving or being asked to leave every promotion pretty quickly that he ever worked for one reason or another. But what was it? Do you even remember? Why did he suddenly vanish without a trace after 8 weeks on top with you?
Well, he had a lot of habits that was, what would you say, against the law. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the way to say it.
So, yeah, I mean, if it could be done, he did it. And then his breakfast was this. He would buy a little bottle of vodka. He would roll a joint, and he would set it beside his in the morning on his nightstand. He would get up, he would cut an orange in half, he would hit the vodka, hit the joint, and then whatever else going all day. But that was how he started his day every morning. So I think he got it. And do you ever remember when he shot the guy in the foot on Printer's Alley? Did you ever hear that story?
That's right. I remember a story about him shooting somebody in the foot. What happened there?
Okay. The guy was beating up the dancer, and Printer's Alley used to be like strips clubs and then, you know, all that kind of thing. And so he was going down there, and the dancer was beating up the girl, and John shot him in the foot. And the guy thought he was Al Green. So that's when he first come to Australia the first time. And the guy said, "You're Al Green." He said, "Yes, I am, and don't you forget it." Well, went and eventually a couple of weeks later come to the matches and wanted to arrest Al, but John had come to Australia in that 2 weeks, so they never really did find Big Bad John. But I think his past kind of caught up with him, what he had done and hadn't done when he was in Memphis and Nashville and around there. And then he just left. He never said nothing to nobody. He just went to California.
I remember actually he ran on top in Memphis in like 72 for a while, and then came back in 74 for about 6 weeks, and then came back with you in 76. And that was the last time he came back. He never came back after that.
No, they killed him in California.
Yeah. Yes. Floating in a bathtub, right? Well, I guess he wouldn't have been floating at his size, unless it was a big bathtub.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure that was some kind of deal going wrong.
You've had some great partnerships in your time, Bill.
I'm telling you, Mike Boyette and Chris Colt.
Oh,
they were kind of wild too.
Well, you replaced Mike Boyette because they were supposed to come in the territory in 75 as heels with a big push and on top with the Fargos, and Boyette never even made but the first show before, or did he even make the first show? Did he come? Because you replaced him like instantly. Yeah,
and Colt and I kind of got over. We had the young guy, Billy Colt, as the valet. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, they were supposed to. You're right. The Outlaws or something they were going to be, right?
Yeah, as the matter of fact, they actually went so far as to take the publicity pictures, and the first week in the newspaper ads, it was listed as Chris Colt and Mike Boyette, and Boyette fucked up somehow before he even got to territory because you were there that week, and it made the matches better, believe me. But Chris Colt, There's another guy. He's always on my list of the best worker that you never heard of for one reason or another. Chris Colt was amazing in the ring, but he was a lunatic, right?
Yeah, kind of. He just, I never took pills, but I mean, I don't know what they do to you, but most of the guys I knew did. They would go kind of goofy on you every now and again. I drank beer or a little whiskey, and that would make me nuts enough, but some of them had habits that was just different.
Chris Cole was different all the way around, but he was entertaining to watch as a fan. Was he good to work with as a worker? He seemed like he knew what he was doing. Impressive.
Oh, yeah. He was a very good worker, psychology and everything. He was a very good worker. And Boyette wasn't doing too bad once you got him. You remember we had him as Apocalypse and all the other things. I mean, he got over mid-cards on that gimmick.
Well, Chris Colt definitely had just his personal habits, and he was another big bad John, and he just went from territory to territory and never got a spot where he could stay and get over big. But with Mike Boyette, you brought him in as Apocalypse, a soldier of fortune, and he's dressed as a combat guerrilla warfare jungle fighter, right? And he's got camouflage paint on his face, and he's got the cowboy or the combat boots on and a leather, camouflage helmet, and he looks just fearsome and freaky. And first thing is, he was so stiff, they made him take the boots off, so he started wrestling barefooted. And he said the boots were made out of potatoes. And then he started painting his face up in weird designs. Like one night he went out painted up like a panda bear. Yeah. And he looked cute. And I'm managing him. Yeah. I've got a cute soldier of fortune.
Yeah. They would give him to you.
his last night in Memphis, he was wrestling Bobby Fulton, and he goes for the second rope diving headbutt, and his foot slipped off the rope, and he dove side of his head first into Bobby Fulton's midsection and jacked his neck up real bad. And he was supposed to win, so he was paralyzed on one side.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then I get in the ring, and I'm so green, I don't know what I'm doing, and I grab the arm he's got that's paralyzed from his neck jack up, and I raise that arm, and he sells it. Yeah. And that was the end of Apocalypse, wasn't it?
Yeah. Did Bobby ever cover him?
Bobby, I think somehow he did. I can't remember. No, you know what it was? Bobby covered himself because Bobby was supposed to lose, but Apocalypse couldn't get on him. So Bobby rolled over and pulled Apocalypse over on top of him.
Yeah, I remember that. I know it was a fucked up deal, and I remember the thing. He dove off the turnbuckle and jacked his neck up. He certainly did. He was paralyzed.
Yeah, because it took Bobby Fulton a little while to react because Mike Boyette landed so hard in his midsection with his head that it knocked the breath out of Bobby Fulton, and he couldn't get it together for a minute. Bill, you and Jerry Lawler in Memphis for a 10-year period. I mean, you guys wrestled over 30 years, but just from the mid-'70s and mid-'80s, you guys drew more money as a rivalry against each other than anybody else in the history of the territory. And everybody, still points to that period, and they think of Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. Whether you were tag team partners or opponents or whatever, you were either, racing for the top babyface spot or the top babyface heel program at most of those times. That means you had genuine emotion, and building a rivalry isn't done very well anymore. And the best quote that I remember from anybody on this is you in the Memphis Heat documentary when you said the people believed it. Hell, we believed it. We thought it was real. You took yourselves seriously, and as a result, the people kept coming back week after week, year after year. Can you build a rivalry like that anymore? Can you even do that anymore?
I don't really think so, because you'd have to have the weekly TV thing, then you'd have to have the two personalities, Lawler and me, the thing, and both. See, talking about taking it seriously, I did, Pat Malone would come and say, the Bell Boys in Louisville, and yell at you, come to the ring, you go to the ring. Well, they were yelling for me and Lawler. It was a tag thing, and I tapped him. I said, hey, man, we're going to get your hat to go to the ring. So I turned around to leave, and he tapped me on the shoulder. He said, this is a crown. And I mean, he said it jokingly, but see what you're saying about believing? He didn't want it called a hat. So it was, And I thought, yeah, that's true. So I mean, it's a fake crown, fake king, but still, we believe, and the people believe.
Well, we've talked about it here on the show and in different shows we do here on MLW, in that so many people in wrestling now, they've quit taking themselves seriously enough to the point where it doesn't look like they're trying to make me believe this shit. And I think that's part of the problem. And with you and Lawler, there was so much history that you could figure into it. And Jerry Jarrett was very smart with the way that he booked you guys, because he actually gave you a false start a year before he booked the big program. You started working with Lawler in 76, but it didn't come to much at that point, but it laid the seeds for when you did the summer of 77, and you guys worked week after week after week and did several sellouts.
Right.
You had history, and you built because people knew that there was some genuine tension there. Because let's face it, you guys were two completely different people. You and Jerry Lawler have very little in common on a personal basis, but you respected each other's talent and ability. But there was plenty of room for both of you to take shots, and you did.
Right, and that was the thing that we did. We would say half-truths on the interview. I mean, you couldn't get your feelings hurt who was trying to draw money. But as far as the talent, there is none better than Lawler, talking, working, whatever he's doing. I mean, he's a hell of an artist. I mean, it's just, he's a talented man. And you can't take that away from him. And, I could hold more in the ring and wrest him. But when I first come here and we started that program, I mean, the interviews on my side were kind of stumble and stammering. But Lawler, he was always a good talker. But I caught up with him in the end so I could get my own back. But you know what I mean? So the people felt sorry for me. I was a cute little baby face that stuttered and stammered.
That's actually the thing, is Lawler was so slick there at the first of it, like you said, that people felt sorry for you. Instead of laughing at Lawler's jokes, he was perpetrating them against a baby face. They were offended. It was like you remember their family. So they got mad at him for being a smart ass, and they felt sorry for you. But because you had been in the wrestling business for 12, 13 years at that point, but when you first got here, you hadn't been doing television, especially in featured spot. So the first time you switched heel, I think is really when your promos kicked in, and then you took that back as a babyface when you switched back again, and then you could joust with him a lot better because you had the attitude from that first round.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like you have to learn that. That's what I don't think the kids are kind of know, or maybe even Vince and them do it all different. But you have to learn this craft, and somebody has to teach it to you. You just don't wake up and be Jerry Lawler, you know what I mean, as far as being able to talk. I watched him, and I thought, fuck, I wish I could talk like that. And I think, so you just learn off him, and you take your own personality, and you get the words or however you want to use it. And it's just like you built from that little guy that started taking pictures to the obnoxious son of a bitch that you are today in the wrestling business, you know what I mean?
And it didn't take long for me. That's the thing, is that you guys, by the way that you did your promos, even when y'all weren't working with each other, even when you were partners, there was still some abrasiveness, you and Lawler.
Right.
And the way that you did your promos, the way that the announcer, Lance and Dave, would talk about you guys when you were in the ring, but you would carry it to, even after the matches, back in the old days, I know the kids these days might have trouble believing this, but it was regular stops in regular towns. So there was a store after the matches at every town where the guys would stop and they'd get beer or they'd get food or McDonald's or whatever. And even at the store, when the fans would come up to you guys for autographs, and crowds did back in those days, you'd look over at Lawler getting in his car, you driving separately, and he's your tag team partner. You'd say, look, there's Lawler going to listen to his new record album on tape all the way back home. And Lawler was over at McDonald's watching you get beer, going, yeah, look at Dundee. He's going to do it, and he'd complain about you. And the fans knew that there was tension, so every time one of you guys switched, it was money. That's why we've talked about the summer of 77 being your first year as a main event singles wrestler, and you and Lawler doing record business, but you actually 6 years later did the big record business. And that's when I had just got started, was going to Atlanta with you when you did the Loser Leave Town match with Lawler in June. And all that week through the big towns, it was the biggest grossing week that Jarrett Promotions ever had in the wrestling business, with you guys selling out Louisville and Memphis and Nashville and Evansville and drawing a hell of a house in Lexington. That's probably before or since the biggest week they've ever had.
Yeah. But here was the other thing, and you hit on it. I'm thinking, Jerry Jarrett kind of manipulated me and Lawler to not really be the best of friends. You know what I mean? It was like fucking Lawler said this or Dundee said that, and we knew, but we was a kind of being played. But what the hell? It went along with the territory. It was fun, and I can honestly say this: Jerry Lawler and I have never had a cross word away from the ring. In 30 years of working, or 40 years of working with one another, we have never got mad at one another outside, the TV land.
Well, yeah, that's what the beauty of it was, is that people genuinely thought that you guys hated each other.
Right.
And once again, like you said, you respected each other's talent and ability, and you were way different people, and there was stuff that you could hang your hat on. But when it came to making money, you knew that, the other guy was necessary, so did he. And you were able to channel that for the good of wrestling instead of griping about each other and not drawing any money with it.
Right. And here's the other thing. I mean, he was the king. He had the crown, so I was quite happy being the superstar. I mean, one notch behind him was I was happy. There's no sense trying to be him because that was never going to happen.
The 1983 deal also was great to me because it was the first time you'd ever done a match with you being the heel. Because all of y'all's other programs, 79 when he broke his leg and it didn't really get off the ground, but you had always been the babyface. This time you were the heel, and that match remains one of the 5 best matches I've seen live. I encourage everybody to get on YouTube or whatever and check out if you can find a tape of it. But that's when you went to Atlanta, and you were, after booking Tennessee, that had been the only booking job you'd had up to that point in time since you got in the United States, was Memphis. Now we had to, you had to take this ragtag band of misfits down to Atlanta and work for Ole Anderson. And that was, it was fun. It was great for me. I got to work like 6 times every show, but it was probably hard for a booker for you.
Well, it was just hard. Ole, remember when he took the Fantastics to the damn Omni and he wanted to beat him, and we were trying to draw money in the little clubs around Atlanta, and I told Bobby Fulton, do not do the job for the Road Warriors, and they never did it. He said, don't say we can't do it. And Hawk and them didn't give a damn, but Ole was bitching and raising hell. And then when he called me, I said, Ole, how can we draw money if you're going to take my boys down to the fucking Omni and beat them with the Road Warriors or whoever else? It doesn't work that way, Ole. I mean, he knew that, but you know how it is.
The best part was trying to envision Bobby Fulton standing there, looking up at the Road Warriors going, I'm sorry, guys, but Dundee won't let us put you over.
Yeah, that would be great because he wasn't there. But no, they took it in their stride. They were good guys.
All the time that you were booking in Memphis and then there in Georgia and other places we'll talk about, but I always thought you were recognized, and I certainly recognize you as a great finish man. And nobody even uses that term anymore, but Eddie Graham was a great finish man. There's been, several noted people have been great at finishes. You always had great finishes where it didn't bury, if they did it right, it didn't bury anybody. It didn't leave anybody looking stupid. There was action, there was excitement, and you really took those, especially stuff that you had perfected in a Tennessee territory when you were booking for Bill Watts in Louisiana. Not only the finishes, but just how was it different working for Bill Watts than Jerry Jarrett, and how was it different booking for Bill Watts than Jerry Jarrett?
Well, you worked for both of them, so Bill was all for, and he never did get over being wanted big guys in there. But when we got Ricky and Robert over in the Midnight Express, and you and me and Dutch, he had to kind of look at his bank account. But Watts never really, would you say, condoned the smaller guys, because he would say, you're not filling this place up with midgets now. If you're drawing money, what difference does it make? But Jerry Jarrett's size didn't mean to him either. He was a smaller guy, and he had Tojo, So he understood, and I got to say this, in all fairness to Jarrett. There used to be a remedy for this business. You did a finish this way, you could just put your own twist to it. And he used to just say to me, Bill, make it believable. If you're going to kick him in the nuts, carry him out. If you're going to kick him in the nuts for a high spot, it's bullshit. So that's what I used to try to do. If we did whatever we did, if we hung you with a rope, we're actually going to hang you, throw you over the top rope and get around your neck and have you dangling there. So I think just my way, I used to just try to make it all believable. Would I believe it if I was watching? So if I thought I would believe it, then that's what we would do.
Well, you know, that's the thing is that it seems like that now it's a lost art on how to not only give but execute a finish so that everybody's in the right place. Invariably, it looks like somebody's just waiting around with their thumb up their ass looking for something to do. But I used to love that's how I learned to give finishes in the wrestling business was actually from you, because especially in Nashville, where the babyface and heel locker room are two like concrete slab rooms on opposite sides of the building. And when Bill was the booker, ladies and gentlemen, he couldn't come to the heel locker room, so he'd send a finish over by a referee. But if the referee that night had a bunch of stuff to do, or he just wanted to jot down some details, Bill would jot it down and send it over by the referee. And Bill, the best thing I ever did was learn how to read your handwriting. When you'd get in a hurry, you'd been at Memphis TV and you'd 200 miles back to Nashville and you're starting to rip off some guy's finishes on a piece of paper. And I was the one who could interpret your handwriting. So I got to give the finishes over on the other side. That's how I learned. But they made sense. And Bill, you would blow up. You would act out the last 3 minutes of the match as you were telling it to us physically, and you'd be blown up by the time you got finished with it.
Right. I mean, the passion that you had for it, and I'm sure you're the same way. If you're going to tell, so seeing something done is you can see it better than just telling them. So you're right. I'd act it out, do this, slam the motherfucker, drop an elbow on the son of a bitch. We couldn't give finishes without using them two words, but it worked.
Well, let me ask you this: as a booker. And you not only you booked Memphis for quite a while, then you booked our 6 weeks summer vacation in Atlanta, but then you booked Mid-South, the best 2 years they ever had financially. Then, you've worked on a creative team in WCW. You've done this most of the time for the past 30 years. What guys did you see stardom in and try to feature? Not necessarily the names, although you can mention names, but just what kind of guys on the roster? What stood out to you? Was it their work? Was it their attitude? Was it their personality? Who did you always want to use in a better position when you had control over that type of thing?
You're talking back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day.
Yeah, well, you know how you kind of had to like one another. You didn't have to love one another, but you had to respect one another and like one another and trust one another. If I gave you the Midnight Express to finish, it wasn't like I was trying to kill you off. It was for a reason. If you went over, it was for a reason. If the rock and roll went over, it was for a reason. So you had to get the personality of the guy to trust you. And then you had to know that he wasn't going to fuck you too, because if you get him red hot, then he just leaves. You got to start all over again. So you have to have that trust. And I think we were more like family back then than they are today, if that's the word you can use. So that's what you look for: people that liked you, people that would trust you, and then you could do the same to them.
And you know what? And I said I might do this earlier, but I'm gonna voluntarily, Alice, follow along with me on this. I'm going to voluntarily extend our show podcast time this week, because we're right in the middle of this. Instead of even doing a close and saying tune in for week 2, I'm going to stay on this, because this has been a topic that we actually addressed at the top of the program and that I got in trouble for a few weeks ago. Let me ask your opinion. And I won't even spoil the subject for you by telling you which way to go. But Bill, in your long tenure as a booker, has it been your practice that by using local talent in towns, whether it be football players or local wrestlers or DJs or whatever, that those people can generally sell you some tickets?
No, I never really did that. No.
Now he's going to say no. See, I've been the one campaigning for the internet fans got mad at me because I booked local guys on the card because they sold tickets well. And then I went on a rampage because they went on a rampage about it. And then as soon as I asked you the question, no, you did, because there was a few times you did. Were you responsible for Mike Stark in Memphis? Or was that a Lawler?
No, that was Lawler. All the gimmicks and all the things that came through was Lawler. All the DJs was Lawler. Lawler, you know Lawler. When you invented fucking monsters, Wahoods on, Dr. Frank and Freddie and all that. I never did none of that shit. If it wasn't real for me, I wasn't doing it. Now, don't get me wrong. Mike Stark was a hell of an arm wrestler, and we drew money with him. But that was Lawler.
Yeah, but as a matter of fact, I must say also that you could tell the difference when Bill was booking and when Lawler was booking, because when Lawler was booking, chances are the Frankenstein monster would show up in a box, and it was cool television, but they didn't seem to have the power of longevity. Those gimmicks didn't have legs.
No.
As a matter of fact, one time he took Duke Myers away from me, remember, so he could make him the Colossus of Death. And Duke had the biggest head in wrestling. His head was like 2 sizes too big for his body, right? And his forehead was enormous. He used a headbutt as a finish. But then they started putting this Halloween mask on him and calling him the Colossus of Death, and it was a rubber Halloween mask, a full head thing. So his head sweated off like fucking 4 inches in circumference in a month in this gimmick. His head was then like a peanut on top of his body. Am I lying?
No, I mean, you're right. I mean, that rubber hood, and then they had Tommy Gilbert as the damn Freddy Krueger. He had that rubber mask and that damn sweater on. Fuck. No, I was never into none of that. But
hey, but who did as a wrestler? Who did you like wrestling? And I asked this question because one thing about your matches is whether it was a spot show and you wanted to go into the ring and get a broom and chase the heels with it and be Roughhouse Fargo, or whether you wanted to wrestle and you know, go 40 minutes with Billy Robinson. You adapted to other guys' styles. I've seen you have great matches, obviously with Lawler, with Billy Robinson, that was tremendous, with Nelson Royal, and with Adrian Street. And you couldn't find 4 more different guys. Who did you like wrestling, and who was best for you to work with?
Well, I think just because the brawl and all the things that we did with Lawler, I really enjoyed the Lawler thing because it was a thing. But I enjoyed Billy Robinson. I enjoyed the deals with Street, you and Linda, and the handicap matches and all that shit. It's all different. And Nelson Royal with the junior champion, it was good to work with him. So, but I actually like to wrestle. You know, when me and Barnes came here, we could wrestle. I mean, and we did. You have to wrestle in Australia. So, you know, I adapted to it all, and I like them all. So, I mean, it was just, and I like the Billy Robinsons, the Nick Botwinkles, and the Tony Charleses. I mean, any, you know, or if you wanted to just kick and punch or brawl, I could do that too. So I enjoyed it all.
You know, that it was really cool getting to see you work with Billy Robinson because you did a heavily European style, the World of Sport English style, a lot of stuff that he threw in, and just the mat wrestling, but at the same time, a whole new level of mat wrestling and a whole new level of tightness and quickness. And it was believable, and it was cool to watch. And then you could do the same thing, but completely American style with Nelson Royal. And then you're in the ring with Adrian, and the people are popping because you're playing grab ass with him because you're working with his gimmick, and it just all worked. You had a great variety of styles that you could work when you were in the ring. And I thought that was why usually, you know, the Bill Dundee match, especially in the Memphis territory, was one of the highlights because you knew you could get something out of pretty much anybody if you had to, one way or another.
Right. I mean, and here's the thing. You have to adapt to your opponent. A lot of people didn't like to work with old Donnie Bass because Donnie was slow, methodical, and didn't do a lot. Well, what you had to do was adapt to Donnie's style. You couldn't go out there and want to body slam him, flying head scissors him, drop kick him, do all that bullshit because Donnie couldn't do it. So just have the methodical, slow match, let him choke you, let him get a little heat and go home, and you can have a good match with him. But you had to have Donnie's style of match.
I think that's a lost art in the business these days also. Is right. Being able to, because they're the same people are teaching and the same people are learning and they're in the same class. It's more of the same. There's no variety. And I mean, there was never any telling. There was a lot of sameness in the finishes as I go back and look in the matches in the 70s. You know, it was basic variations on a theme, but all the matches were vastly different because guys had learned from, 20 different people in 20 different territories.
Right, and that was what made it all different. It was all ended up the same way, but you had different avenues of getting there, and they don't have that today.
Well, Bill, I tell you what, I appreciate it. I guess I should cut it off here because we've gone way over time talking to the superstar this week. But Bill, plug your show again. But the superstar and the Aussie. How can we hear it? Blog Talk Radio.
Yeah, Blog Talk Radio. It's the superstar and the Aussie. You just go to Blog Talk Radio and do that. But if you want to get my book on my website for merchandising, you go to www.bill-superstar-dundee-enterprises.com.
Bill-superstar-dundee-enterprises.com.
That's it. And you can get anything you want. You can get all them matches you're talking about.
You will even have lunch with selected parties if all people agree, correct?
Oh, look, me and Randy Hales. Randy's sitting here listening to this show, so me and Randy went up there today. And then, fuckers, was 4 MMA fighters. And I thought they were going to kill them. The guy said, "Now, when they get here, we want you to cut an interview on them." And I said, "Well, who the hell are they?" And they said, "Oh, they own gyms. They're MMA fighters." And I thought, wow, me and Randy's going to get our ass kicked here. But no, it was fun. We had a lot of fun today.
Wait, now you do a surprise run-in right at the finish of the program. If I'd have known Randy Hales was there, being the wrestling expert that he is and has been his entire adult life, I would have had him chime in on his conversation. Randy, are you susceptible to being a guest on the program at a future date?
Well, it's hurt my feelings. I don't even have your phone number anymore.
I didn't change my phone number. You're the one that changes your phone number. Generally,
yeah, I'd love to. I've kept my mouth shut because I just love the thing. But I want to throw this in just real quick. Those 4 guys grew up on Memphis wrestling, and I don't think any wrestling territory. I know people have where they grew up their favorite, but the passion of I love that lunch. Not just because they bought us a free meal, but because Jimmy, the passion that they had of Memphis wrestling and the desire to hear Bill's stories was just unbelievable. I mean, 40 years later, you know, the way they treated him and how much interest they had in him, that was phenomenal. And you would have loved it to be there and just shut up like I shut up and just listen to Bill be the superstar. It was one of the best things I've done in a long time. It was great.
Because you just said there's no way that you would have just kept running on and talking there in a situation like that. You shut right up and listen. Randy Hales, you're a one-man podcast guest in yourself. If you will come back, I sent you a Christmas card and it was returned to the sender because your address was no good. You have not even kept me up to date on your whereabouts.
It's because I'm homeless. That's why I'm staying with Bill for a month before I go back to this circus, and I've done an 8-week deal with TNA, and we can talk about that after I get
now wait a minute.
That could be a podcast.
Wait a minute. Explain to people. It's not that you're saying loosely, I'm going back to the circus, like you're going back to something that's a circus. You're actually going back to the circus. You work for Cole Brothers Circus. Is that correct?
Cole Brothers Circus. Bill got me the spot. He did it for about 5 or 6 years. This was my first year, and I was gone for 9 months. Then I did 8 weeks helping promote towns for TNA, and now I'm bumming with the superstar for about a month. So you can imagine how much Memphis wrestling talk and how much we're knocking everybody for the next month. I'm in the hog heaven right now, Jimbo.
Well, as a matter of fact, and Bill Dundee's telling people, yeah, Randy Hale spent a month with me last night, right?
Right. There you go. We got you. Hey, listen, if we want to tell them boys to listen to this, how do you find this thing? Use your radio.
Well, as you can tell, we're not as highly listened to as I don't know, Jericho's podcast or anything, but you can go to mlw.com. Alice, have you given up on this at this point, or are you still there, Alice?
Oh, absolutely not. I'm still here, sir.
They can go to mlw.com just like all the other fine folks and listen to this program that we've just perpetrated, can they not?
Yes, they can. And if they so desire, they can also go to mlwvip.com. There you can see the VIP content and the regular content.
See, that's the first time in history that even you made Randy Hales' voice even sound good with that pitch you just gave. That Randy and Bill, thank you very much to Jonesboro, Arkansas's honorary mayor Randy Hales, the superstar Bill Dundee, and Alice Radley, the Alisator herself, and I'm Jim Cornette. For this week, it got out of control on the Jim Cornette Experience. Ladies and gentlemen, I bid you good day.